Okay, so let's start by finding the slope of the graph. Um, and then it says, where do you see the values in Xander's equation? Okay, let's just find the slope to begin with. We've done this before. Pick some points. So let's see. 1, 8. That's 1 point. What could be another possible point? 214. So that would be 6 ones, right? 6 to 1. 6 miles for every 1 day, or just 6. Okay, where did we see that value in the equation? Look at the equation there. It's right here. Yeah, 6x. What do we call that number that's in front of any variable, multiplying the variable? Starts with a C.
A constant.
Constant's more like the number being added or subtracted. Coefficient. Yeah. The coefficient of x in the equation, but let's just say the coefficient of x. All right. What value does the graph touch on the y-axis? Basically, the y-intercept. It's at 2. And do you see that in his equation? This is the constant for sure. It's the constant. 2 is the constant in Xander's equation. Okay, so Xander's equation is written in what we call slope-intercept form. And so below we're going to describe this. Okay, so let's get into the definition of slope-intercept form. I like this green. Oh, I'm going to use this blue much. Let's use that. Okay, slope-intercept form, or y equals mx plus b, is one way to write the equation of a linear relationship. It's the most common one, to be honest. It's the most common way of writing an equation, a linear relationship equation. The y-intercept of a graph is the value of y where the line crosses the y-axis, or when x equals 0. But we already knew that. We've already explored and talked about the y-intercept. Okay? So here is the main thing, the big takeaway for today, guys. Whenever you see this equation, y equals mx plus b, the coefficient for x, right, that number there, whatever it is, that is the slope for the line, the steepness. It's the steepness. And the b value, positive or negative, even 0, but we explored when it was 0 yesterday. This is the y-intercept. I'll just abbreviate it Y-int. Okay? So the coordinates would be 0, comma, whatever number b is. Okay? So among other things, what this is going to allow us to do, if you give me an equation written this way, I really don't need any extra formulas or any extra calculations. I could just see the equation written in this format, and I could graph the line for you. Okay, and then we'll get into that in a little bit. Okay, any questions? Okay. So just remember, if you know the slope and the y-intercept, you can write the equation of the line. Take a look at these examples 1 through 3. They're basically giving us the information of the slope and the y-intercept in 3 different ways. Okay. So let's see. Say the slope is -9 and the y-intercept is 2. They want us to write the equation in slope-intercept form. And whenever they say y slope-intercept form, y equals mx plus b. Okay. So if they tell us the slope's -9 and the y-intercept is +2, what would our equation be? Y equals -9x plus 2. Doesn't get much easier than that. Okay, I want you to use the same information. They're going to give you the slope and the y-intercept. Write the equation for each of these. I want you to try it on your own. Okay, what do you think the equation is? It should be in y equals mx plus b form. So they're giving you the m, giving you the b. We need the whole equation. So give it a try. All right. This is what I wrote. Okay, raise your hand if your answer was almost identical to mine. The only difference that was probably okay, did any of you put plus -10? Did anyone do that? Nope. Okay, that's fine. That's fine. But if it is a negative number, just get in the habit of just writing -10 or minus whatever the number is. Okay? So technically, if you put plus negative, that's fine. That's acceptable. But it's more proper to write it just the minus. Okay, they tell us on number 3, the line has a slope of -5 and passes through the origin. Remember, the origin is 0, 0. So that means my y-intercept number is 0. And if it's 0, you don't need to put plus 0. If you did, that's fine. Did anyone put plus 0? That's perfectly fine. But it's not needed. It's not normally written when it goes through the origin. You just don't include it. Okay? Any questions? All right. So let's go ahead and try reading the information when we see an equation in this format. Okay, so this time we want the slope and the y-intercept, and we want to just draw a quick interpretation of what the graph of the line might look like. Okay? So that's what we're going to do for number 4. Look at our equation, y equals x minus 5. We want the slope. So raise your hand if you think you know what the slope number is. All right, raise your hand if you think you know what the slope number is. Jose, what's the slope possibly? 1. The slope is 1 here, guys. Again, you don't see any coefficient, right? But what's the coefficient when there's no number in front of your variable? 1. So because of that, it's 1. Okay. What might the y-intercept number be? -5. Okay, so you can look at the equation and pull out that information. Now let's possibly make what the graph looks like. Okay. So for the graph, yeah, where's it going to cross the y-axis? That's what we usually start with. -5. It's going to cross somewhere at -5. Now the slope is +1. Does that tell me it goes uphill or downhill? Uphill. So I don't know exactly what it's going to look like, but it might look like something like this. It's going to cross at -5 below the x-axis, below 0, and it's +1, so it's got a positive slope. Okay? Okay, let's try the next one. And raise your hand if you think you know the slope for y equals 3x. Y equals 3x. What could it be? All right. Anthony. 3. Okay, how about the y-intercept? Y-intercept. Gabriel.
0.
A 0. So where is this line going to cross?
The origin.
At the origin, right? At 0. And how is my line going to look? Uphill, downhill? Uphill. Since the slope is 3, actually even kind of steep. But I'll just make it something like that. The line should look something like that. Okay? All right. Very good. Let's try the next one. Y equals -5x plus 7. I want to see some new hands. The slope here, or else I may call on you. All right. Isabella. -5. Very good. Okay. How about the y-intercept? Yes, Catherine. What is it? 7. Very good. Okay. Now let's use that information. Where will my line cross the y-axis? At 7. That's usually your starting point. This y-intercept number is your starting point. Let's say 7 is somewhere here, above 0, obviously. And now, what's my line going to do? It's going to go downhill. It's a negative slope. It should go downhill. Something like that. Okay? So that's the beginnings of how to graph using a slope-intercept equation. Any questions? All right. Well, let's just get into this. You guys ready?
Yeah.
Okay, let's flip the page. Let me take a quick sip of my coffee. My throat's getting a little dry. All right, guys. So in this one, we're going to do the reverse. We have a line. That's right. We're going to do the reverse. We have some lines, and we're going to pull out the slope and the y-intercept information and write our equation. Okay? So let's start with number 5. Let's start with the slope. Let's pick a couple of points to find the slope on this graph. There we go. Okay. Let's find the slope number from that. Up and across. What's my slope? 1 is this rise. 3 is the run. So my slope is 1/3. Remember, it's rise, you're changing the y value, over the run, the change in the x value. It's 1/3. Okay, how do I get my y-intercept? How do I figure out this b number? Where do I go? Guys, turn around. Come on. That's fascinating. Put your finger back the way it belongs in. What do we want? Yes, Kaylee. So it begins at 3, not at the origin. So my y-intercept number is 3. So let's write our equation. Y equals 1/3 x plus 3. Okay? So I'd like you to try the next one on your own. Okay? All right, let's take a look. Hopefully you got something like this. Okay, so I picked the point -3, 4, and 0, 2. So I went down 2 to the right 3. So my slope is -2/3. Then I noticed the line crosses at +2, so the y-intercept is 2. So my equation was y equals -2/3 x plus 2. All right? All right, fantastic. Let's just quickly go through the rest of these in. Let's find a slope for number 7. So let's pick a couple points. Maybe this one and this one. So I'm going from 21 to 24. What's my rise? Well, remember, I'm going up one step, but if I'm going from 21 to 24, I'm going up 3, yeah. And then I'm going from 4 to 8. So that's 4. So what's my slope now? 3/4. Okay. And this line crosses the y-axis at 18. So y equals 3 plus 18. Okay. Let's see this one. Well, the y-intercept is definitely 180. I usually start there, to be honest. That's the quickest and easiest one to find. I'll pick this point and this point. So I'll pick 2, 120, and 460. So definitely going downhill, it's a negative slope. Okay, so if I'm going from 120 down to 60, how much did I go down? -60. And then I went from 2 to 4. I went across 2. So I'm going to reduce this. -60 over 2, what is that? -30. So the rate or the slope is -30. So y equals -30x plus 180. All right. This is an interesting one. Well, I got a y-intercept for sure. Y-intercept's 14. And the slope is 0. Do you all agree that the slope is 0? It's a horizontal line. Remember we talked about that? The slope is 0. Y equals 14. Yeah, because you would write y equals 0x plus 14. But 0 times x becomes 0. And 0 plus 14 is just 14. So shortcut, y equals 14. Okay. Let's do this one. Looks like we're crossing at -8. And we have a positive slope of something. I go from negative 14 to negative 12. How much did I go up?
1.
Yeah. I went up 1. Yeah, I went up 2. Went up 2. And then I went from negative 12 to 8. So I went up, each one looks like it's 2, so I went up 4. So my rise over run is 2 over 4. It's 2 over 4. Yeah, simplify it to 1/2. Simplify that to 1/2 and negative 8. Process at negative 8. So the equation is okay. Y equals 1/2 x minus 8. Yeah, remember, if it get in the habit of not doing plus negative, just write it as minus 8. Okay. Matt is going to create a graph from the equation y equals 4/5 x minus 7. Mark each statement as true or false and correct the false statement. Okay. So here's his equation that he's going to use to graph. So Matt's graph will cross at negative 7, 0. Is that true or false? It's going to cross at negative 7, 0. It is false. Yeah, that's actually the negative 7, 0 isn't the, I think they're confusing it with, yeah. They're confusing it with 0, negative 7, which is the y-intercept. This is actually the x-intercept, which happens a lot. Remember, your first point is always, your first location is always on the y-axis, not the x-axis. Okay, let's just say this is the x-intercept. Common mistake that happens. People always start graphing on that point. Matt's graph will increase from left to right. It will increase from left to right. So going from left to right, it's going to go uphill. Is that true? Look at the slope. It's true. That's a positive slope. It should increase from left to right. Okay. Circle the name of any students who wrote the equation that could possibly represent the graph line shown to the right. So we got Javier, Carissa, and Liam. And here's the graph. Which ones could have possibly been the correct ones? Okay, Carissa. Anybody else? Just Carissa? Why not Javier?
Because it's a negative slope and the slope is going up, which is positive.
Yeah. Yeah, that just and yeah. Well, not that one. Why not Liam?
Yeah, because it says that the y-intercept is positive, but actually, if you look at the slope more carefully, the y-intercept is actually in the negative spot.
Yeah. So not this guy. It's Carissa. There we go. All right, guys. So we're done with the lesson. The assignment is on Cami.